Welcome to episode 20 of the Active Bariatric Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Terapelli, bariatric sports dietitian. Today, I want to discuss body recomposition, or the goal of leaning out while gaining or maintaining muscle mass. After bariatric surgery, especially in the first 1 to 2 years post-op, bariatric clients are going through a rapid weight loss phase, which includes body fat loss as well as muscle loss. Overall nutritional intake is in its lowest state in this early post-op phase. But this episode is not targeting that window, but rather once you have gotten through the weight loss phase and have reached your maintenance weight, but want to change your body composition further, also known as body recomposition. So let's dive in. So what does recomposition mean? I bet you've heard this, in lots of different podcasts out there. But this term typically describes simultaneous fat loss and muscle gain. So what are the factors that impact the ability to change body composition, or the hierarchy of recomp ability? So how much body fat you have to lose. If you have more body fat to lose, you are going to see results quicker. If you are leaner already, it will take longer. So for those of you that are maybe newer out after having your bariatric surgery and you're just starting to really maybe begin resistance training and really get a set workout schedule in place, you may see body fat losses a little bit more dramatic or significant initially. And then as you get leaner, it might take longer to see more significant changes in that body fat. How long you've been resistance training also plays a role. So if you are newer to resistance training, again, you will likely see more muscle gains, whereas someone who's been lifting consistently for years may not see as dramatic of an increase and may take longer to see significant changes in body composition. So let's talk a little bit today about what the nutritional requirements are for body recomposition. So first, for someone who's had bariatric surgery, you are likely already in a caloric deficit. So when I begin working with my bariatric clients, I first work with you to establish what is the overall nutritional intake needed to fuel your workouts, to help you with muscle gaining, or to just provide you with that adequate fuel to get through your workouts. So again, when I start with someone, the first thing we're going to do is get an idea of where you currently are with your calories, your macronutrients, and then we will make changes to optimize your workouts as well as achieve whatever goal you're working towards. Oftentimes, I find that people are, coming to me and their intake is too low. Okay. And so usually the first thing we do is we try to optimize calories, carbohydrates, proteins, fats to see those significant changes because you're going to feel a lot better if we can get you to that kind of just maintenance level right now in terms of calories and macronutrient needs. And then we can make more changes based on what your goal is. So if you're wanting to gain muscle, we might need to go up on things. If we're wanting to, lose more body fat, we need to tweak both our workouts as well as our nutrition to see those results. If I have a client who is primarily focused on muscle gaining, we will focus on increasing overall calories and protein. So if you remember, guys, back in episode 15 of the Active Bariatric Nutrition Podcast, I discussed the caloric and protein requirements for someone who is just focused on gaining muscle, or as some of you may call bulking phase. Okay, we discussed starting with adding in a conservative 200 calories per day from where you currently are, and then we also discussed looking at protein. So again, in order to gain muscle, it's going to require resistance training. I want to throw that in there. Both these goals today, whether you're in a gaining goal or you're in a leaning out, it's going to require resistance training. But in terms of the nutritional requirements, when someone comes to me and they're like, "Hey, I just want to start gaining muscle," we're going to look at where we are with calories. We are going to probably try a very conservative 200 calorie increase to start and then go up from there. In addition, in episode 15, I talked a ton about protein requirements for muscle gaining, as that is very critical. It's a very, very important macronutrient for gaining muscle. And if you remember back in that episode, I talked about the range for protein should be about 0.7 to 1 gram per pound for protein per day, or 1.6 to 2.2 gram per kilogram for muscle gaining. So remember, as discussed, reaching your total protein intake per day is the most important factor. So back in that episode, I talked about number one goal is we have to make sure we're meeting our overall protein goals. After that, then we can look at the distribution of protein per meal, as well as the timing of protein around workouts and optimizing those strategies as well to help you, again, see a little bit more in that muscle gaining goal. So if you haven't listened to episode 15, I would highly recommend that just because today's episode is kind of complementary to that one in that we're building on the information that we talked about there with just a minor change for leaning out. So while we are, if we have a goal of leaning out while gaining or at least maintaining muscle, this is going to require somewhat of a calorie deficit. Now, of course, after bariatric surgery, you are already in a large deficit, right? But remember too that over time, your metabolism has decreased as well. So when you went through that initial first year, your metabolism has decreased because your overall intake significantly was reduced, right? So when we are looking to maintain and or gain muscle, but also trying to lean out at the same time, we have to keep our protein intake high. That is a key nutritional concept with this goal, particularly. Protein intake has to remain high when you are in a hypocaloric state or a calorie deficit. That is what's going to help you to maintain that muscle, if not maybe gain a little, while you are somewhat reducing body fat. So, some of the key factors in body recomposition. Resistance training is key, okay, to building muscle. So your muscles have to have a stimulus to grow. And in my previous episodes, I've interviewed several fitness professionals. So if you check out episodes 4, 7, 12, and 19, I talked to fitness professionals, personal trainers, and physical therapists who we talk about specifically how to develop a resistance training program based on your different goals. So whether you're just in a muscle gain goal, hypertrophy, just strength gains, as well as also where you are with your phase in your post-op journey. So we talked in those episodes about where someone that's just beginning a resistance training workout, how to begin those types of workouts, how to develop a training session, sets, reps, body parts, how do we split up workouts. So highly recommend, if you haven't listened to episodes 4, 7, 12, and 19 of this podcast, check those out as well if this is one of your goals, because you're going to definitely want to learn about resistance training programming. Okay. But definitely all of those professionals recommended at least 3 to 4 times per week of resistance training, and possibly more based on your experience level and your goals. So I just always kind of say, definitely work with a professional. Okay. So if you're just starting out, you want to work with a certified personal trainer, for example, or a physical therapist to develop your resistance training program, because not only is it going to save you time, but they have the expertise, they have the training, they have the experience working with different clients. And I would work with someone that is experienced. Okay. You don't want to work out with someone that's just brand new, because maybe they don't have experience specifically working with a bariatric client, right? So definitely in all those episodes, they talk about, interview the people, try to find someone that is experienced, maybe based on recommendation, someone that definitely works with bariatric clients. So they have that experience under their belt, and they can help you to be effective, efficient, and safe in your resistance training. But I just want to, summarize by saying, guys, we cannot gain muscle or lean out without doing resistance training. Okay. We have to do resistance training to really see those good muscle gain goals be achieved. Now, the next thing is reaching your daily protein goal. So just like in the muscle gain phase that we talked about in episode 15, with body recomposition or leaning out, keeping your protein high is really critical, especially if you are in a caloric deficit. So in fact, reaching a minimum of that 0.7 to 1 gram per pound, or even up to 1.2 gram per pound, has been shown to be helpful in maintaining or gaining muscle while in a hypocaloric state or a calorie deficit. So for example, in calculating this, you want to use your maintenance weight, or if you know your lean body mass, you can use that number to calculate this out. So for example, if you are 150 pounds at your maintenance weight, multiply that out. 150 times 0.7 is the lower end of that range. That gives us 105 grams of protein per day to aim for, up to about 1 gram per pound, which is 150 grams for a 150 pound person. And then again, even if you go above that, up to 180 grams of protein per day, if we are looking at that 1.2 gram per pound for protein per day. So this is a really key focus. And, luckily as a bariatric client, you've been taught right out of the gate to keep protein paramount. right? And so I always just say to folks when I'm working with them, we don't have to just jump to the high end. Let's start with the lower end and gradually increase that protein intake over time. To give you some references, remember that 3 ounces of protein, such as 3 ounces of chicken or turkey or beef or pork or seafood, that's 21 grams of protein right there. So if you're eating about 3 to 4 ounces of protein, that would be 21 to 28 grams per meal. And then, of course, incorporating additional protein, whether that be through supplementation of a protein drink or, of course, incorporating snacks. Those are all ways to bolster that protein. All right. And you definitely want to try to eat a variety of different protein sources. That way we know we're getting all the essential amino acids, we're getting in those branched chains, specifically leucine, which is very important with protein synthesis. So we definitely want to try at our meals to be eating a wide variety of protein sources and eating on a consistent schedule. And I know I've spoken about that on previous episodes, but we definitely want to, as a strategy when you are focusing on what am I doing in a day for my protein and my intake, we want to be eating on a consistent schedule. Not some days eating at noon, some days eating at 9, skipping all around. We want to have that consistent schedule. That way your body is getting that influx of amino acids that your muscles can use to build protein. Okay. Now, for calories in this body recomposition goal, you can induce a deficit through your workouts, through burning calories, or a reduction in intake. Now, let me just say this, guys, with a bariatric athlete, our intake overall is reduced as compared to just a standard athlete, right? Because you've had bariatric surgery. So your overall intake in general is going to be lower overall compared to someone that doesn't have that tool in place, that bariatric surgical tool in place. So we don't have as many calories to manipulate or decrease. And I always just warn folks when they come to me and they're like, hey, I want to lean out. Honestly, we don't want to just first focus on cutting calories. All right. I will look at what are you doing for exercise? Are you incorporating resistance training? Because that is going to be key in changing your body composition. And we're not going to be significantly cutting calories. Honestly, I'd rather take a look at what you're burning for your workouts and see where we are with your overall calories, your macronutrients, and see if we even have to reduce much in terms of overall calories based on what you're doing for exercise. So I like to work with, I like to see some trends first. We're going to track for a little bit. We're going to take a look at overall caloric intake and your protein, your carbohydrates, and your fats. And then we will make changes based on what we're seeing with your trends. So I don't like to just go into cutting calories, okay? But if we have optimized your carbohydrate, your protein, your fats, your timing of your meals, you're doing a nice job, you're doing your resistance training 3 to 4 times a week, we may start with a very mild reduction of 100 to 200 calories in a day and look how we go from there and how you feel. Because again, we don't have that many calories to play with as a bariatric client, right? So, and of course, everyone's different. I do have clients that are eating a significantly higher amount of calories. And for that person that might be coming from a gaining phase, going into a more leaning out phase, we have more calories to play with. We may reduce more than the 1 to 200 calories. Now, your next question might be, what are you going to be reducing from? What macronutrient are we going to focus on? Well, I can tell you, number one, we will not be changing our protein, right? We're going to keep our protein intake stable. We're going to keep it elevated, right? Because we want to maintain musculature. If we are leaning out, we want to maintain our muscle and not use that as an energy source. And so if we are going to look at reducing calories, I'm going to look at reducing it from fat and carbohydrates, okay? Again, not significantly enough so that you can't work out. We don't want to just be cutting carbs and going like keto or super low carbohydrate. I have not found that beneficial for my bariatric clients. In general, bariatric clients are already eating lower carbohydrate than the standard athlete or the standard diet. So again, it's not significant changes that we're going to make. We're not going to drastically cut, but we're going to do kind of a little bit of a reduction in fat and carbohydrates to help you achieve a caloric deficit if that is what we decide is the best way to go. So again, these are all going to be individualized and based on your individual goals, your workout routine, how much you are aiming to lose. All these things play a role in determining what your caloric and macronutrient needs are going to be. And with that, I would just say, remember, that's why it's so important to work with a registered dietitian, okay? So when we get into these more specific goals, it's so helpful to work with a registered dietitian, especially that has some sports nutrition background, because we can then look at at optimizing workouts and utilizing your nutrition to really help you feel good in those workouts, but then ultimately also working on this body recomposition goal. And it'll just save you time. It's going to be based on science. Registered dietitians have, gone to school for this 4 years, get a bachelor's degree in it. They complete a dietetic internship. And I'm just highlighting that because a lot of times I do get, well, what's the difference between a nutritionist and a registered dietitian? Remember that a registered dietitian has a bachelor's degree in nutritional sciences. So there's a lot of training that goes into this. So I just want to highly, recommend if you are looking at a goal like this, consider working with a registered dietitian because you're just going to get such better, information and feedback and more direct nutritional guidance throughout this goal. Other behaviors that are going to help with body recomping, prioritizing sleep. So I know you've heard this before, and sometimes it's easier said than done, right? We all have lives. We have busy work schedules, stress, things like that play a role. But if you come to me and you're like, hey, I really want a body recomp, that's my goal, and I'm not seeing changes. I've tried to adjust my nutrition, and I'm lifting heavy. I'm doing all these things, right? We have to look at sleep because sleep is important in your recovery. It's important in your overall ability to achieve these fitness goals, and it's definitely important in body recomp. So we want to make sure we're aiming for at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. Remember that when we sleep, this is when things like growth hormone is secreted and where we are actually creating protein, our muscle protein synthesis is occurring. And so we want to make sure we are optimizing sleep. This is a missing puzzle piece that we often overlook. So I just want to remind you, sleep is really important. The quality and the quantity of sleep is going to be really critical if you are trying to lean out a little bit further. Tracking. So I know I've talked about this in my stories before. I've talked about this in previous episodes. Tracking is not for everybody. However, for my bariatric clients who do have this goal, it is important to see the numbers. It's important to see the data because it gives us an idea as to what your overall intake is day to day. And then we can look at those body composition measurements and we can see the trends and see what we need to do to basically address those numbers. And I always just remind folks, progress, not perfection, right? You're not going to meet these perfect numbers every single day. That's okay. You can still achieve good results by consistently focusing on your overall intake and being within those ranges that you are provided if you're working with the dietitian. So tracking is a helpful tool. It can just really help you to understand, why your, trends are going in what direction, and we can make changes more rapidly when we have some data to go off of. Staying hydrated. We oftentimes, again, another little puzzle piece that we kind of forget and is somewhat challenging for bariatric clients is getting in our fluids, okay? Because we have that whole issue with separating food and drink, which can kind of make it more challenging to get in adequate fluids, especially if you're working out hard, you're sweating a lot, that increases your needs for fluids more. But in general, what I tell folks is aim for 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce per pound. So for fluids. So for example, if I'm 150 pounds, that's about 75 to 150 ounces per day. Now, I know you're thinking, it's challenging for me, Kim, to get in all those fluids in a day. I get it. So definitely start with that lower end of the range and try to work up as you can. Remember that for every 1 pound lost in sweat in a workout, you want to rehydrate with 16 to 24 ounces of fluid. Make sure that you add that on to your total intake in a day. But definitely staying hydrated is important because when we're dehydrated and we go into a workout, you are going to fatigue sooner. Okay. In addition, if we are dehydrated, we're not going to recover as well, which can increase soreness, poor recovery from your workouts, which can increase your risk of injury if you then repeat that the next day. So staying hydrated is important. And certainly as we get into the warmer months here in the US, it's going to be even more critical that we stay on top of our fluids. So remember that we're separating our food and drink by 30 minutes. But sometimes I just sit down with my clients and we actually write out when we're going to have our meals, when we're going to put in our fluids. And so sometimes just writing that out every day is just helpful for us to see when is it time to be sipping. You can set alarms on your clock or your computer screen. And of course, there's apps out there that you can put on your phone that will remind you to sip throughout the day. Another factor that can help with body recomposition is limiting alcohol intake. So I'm not saying that you can never have any, but obviously as a bariatric client, alcohol is never really recommended. But do people, consume it from time to time? Sure. But certainly if you have a body recomposition goal, alcohol is not going to be something that you're typically going to want to consume because it will slow that body fat loss. Taking your daily bariatric supplements to ensure you're meeting your micronutrient needs. So I know I say this on almost every episode, but I can't tell you the number of folks that I, have been in contact with or that, begin working with me that aren't even maybe a year post-op and they're not staying on top of all their bariatric vitamin and mineral supplements. So, in general, what I try to do when I'm working with clients is we want to certainly take a look at what we're doing for our supplements and make sure that we are doing them from, every day. In addition, if you haven't had labs drawn and you're, a year post-op or, out farther, you should be having your bariatric labs checked every year, annually. Okay, for the rest of your life. And remember too that these bariatric vitamin and mineral supplements are also required daily for life. We've permanently changed your body and the amount of food that you can consume, how it's absorbed, how our body, just our hormones in terms of digestion, those are all impacted after bariatric surgery. And so these vitamin and mineral are required for you to meet your needs every day. So I know it's like, here I am beating a dead horse. I'm always on here talking about your bariatric vitamin and minerals, but guys, it's so important. All these individual micronutrients play such important roles in metabolism of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, which provide your muscles energy when you're exercising, and certainly also for recovery so that you feel good when you're working out. And so again, these are critical. If you ever have questions about bariatric vitamins and minerals, send me a message. I can help you with that. But that's definitely something that I talk to my clients about. Every single session that we talk, I check in. How are you doing your vitamins? You taking those every day because they play that important of a role. Okay. So certainly if you haven't been on track, maybe contact your surgical center, get your vitamin and mineral list that they recommend, and get going on those again. Over time, there's many more options out there now for bariatric multivitamins. And so there are so many great brands out there now that you can basically take your bariatric multivitamin, which have higher amounts of all the nutrients in them, which then limits the amount of individual nutrients you have to take. So brands that I've worked with, Bariatric Advantage, ProCare, Celebrate, I love their bariatric multivitamin options. And then, of course, your calcium citrate and then any additional B vitamins that you might need. Again, I just remind you, go back to your surgical center, check in with them, and definitely get going on those again. Now, additional supplements that can be helpful with whether you're doing a muscle gain phase or you're doing this body recomposition phase, the number one I would talk about would be creatine monohydrate. And I know I've spoken about this again on previous episodes, but creatine monohydrate is a very, very well-researched supplement. And I'll just say right out of the gate, before starting any new supplements, you always want to discuss with your physician before beginning any supplement, or definitely you can speak to a registered dietitian who can talk to you about supplements. But specifically with creatine monohydrate, you definitely would want to talk to your doctor prior to starting it. But the great thing about creatine monohydrate is that creatine basically is, it's a naturally occurring compound in our body. It's made from amino acids, arginine, glycine, and methionine. So our body does synthesize about 1 gram per day from our diet. Our body synthesizes 1 gram and your diet provides about 1 gram per day. Okay. Why is creatine so helpful? Creatine monohydrate basically gives a phosphate to ATP, which is the energy currency of our cell. And it's the prime energy source for activities lasting 30 to 150 seconds in length. So for example, explosive movements such as lifting, sprinting, jumping, any movements such as that are going to be energized by our creatine, our phosphagen system. Okay. So supplementing with creatine monohydrate can be helpful. And as research has suggested and shown in many, many, many research studies, creatine monohydrate can increase muscle size, strength, and power. And so there are different protocols for creatine monohydrate supplementation. The most typical one that's out there is taking 3 to 5 grams per day. It takes about 28 days to saturate your muscle phosphocreatine stores with that dosing regimen. And so after that, you can continue with that 3 to 5 gram per day to maintain that level. There's also, of course, the loading phase, which would be 20 grams per day for 5 to 7 days, split into 4 doses of 5 grams per day. And then you would go back to that 3 to 5 gram per day maintenance phase. I don't typically recommend that loading phase because I don't see it necessary for the clients that I work with to have that saturation so rapid rapidly. That's typically going to be more reserved for more of an elite athlete who needs that in a more short window of time to see results in whatever their goal is. I'm not saying that you can't do it, but typically I just see the 3 to 5 gram per day is sufficient. There's also a relative dosing strategy, which is 0.1 gram per kilogram per day as well that you can use. And again, you'd want to use your maintenance weight to calculate that. Now, creatine you can take before or after the workout. Research has suggested is that you can do either or. It's either or is going to be beneficial for you, and your muscles will uptake that. Especially if you do take it with like carbohydrate containing food or beverage, or even concluding it with some protein as well. So I typically will, have clients, they can stir it into their drinks, they can stir it into Greek yogurt, and they take it around their workouts. Brands that I like that have that NSF certification, which means they've been third-party tested for purity and potency, include Clean Athlete, Momentous, and Thorne. And no, I am not in any partnership with those companies. I just like those companies because they do have that NSF certification and they're relatively affordable as well. So again, I'll summarize with creatine monohydrate. This can be a possible supplement that you add if you are looking to gain some muscle mass and you are resistance training. No purpose in taking creatine if you are not lifting. Okay. So definitely if you are wanting to see some muscle gaining and leaning out at the same time, certainly creatine can be a possible supplement option that you could add. Again, talk to your doctor before beginning any supplements. So, in summary today, if you're looking for body recomposition, remember the big keys will be resistance training. That's important, minimum of 3 to 4 times a week. Work with a fitness professional that has experience that can help you develop a plan that's going to have that progressive overload principle, developed into the plan so that you are increasing your weight over time to see that stimulus that your muscles need for gaining, but also keeping protein intake high. Okay. So again, with the body recomp, if you are in a caloric deficit, protein intake is even more critical to aim for a little bit higher because we want to make sure that we are maintaining that musculature and not using it as an energy source when we are in a caloric deficit. Okay. Remember that severely reducing overall intake will likely reduce your muscle mass, and that is not what you want. Remember that when we have more muscle, guys, we're burning more calories. So twofold with that. Number one, if we reduce calories too low, we're reducing overall intake, you're not going to see that gaining of muscle, which is what stimulates our metabolism. And that is beneficial for someone who's had bariatric surgery, right? For someone that's metabolism has decreased after the surgery, by gaining muscle, we are actually helping to increase our metabolism. All right. But I'd also just say that when we reduce overall intake, it impacts our workouts too, right? So you're not going to feel as well. You'll have lower energy, and that can, impact how you feel as well in terms of during the workouts, but also in your ability to see those goals achieved. Because when we don't feel good, we're not going to be able to work out as hard. Okay. And we're not gonna be able to do as many repetitions. And those repetitions, they accumulate over time. That's what helps us to see those muscle changes. So we definitely want to come into our workouts well fueled. And so again, working with a dietitian can help you to address, where do I want to make changes to my intake if I am trying to really work on a body recomposition goal? Should I reduce calories? Should I use my exercise as that, deficit basically? Where do I adjust carbs, protein, and fats? How do I make meals that are going to meet these macronutrients? You definitely, you want to take all those things into account and work with someone that can help you to create a realistic and a, efficient way to meet all these goals. So I just want to summarize by saying, after bariatric surgery, it's an exciting goal to want to gain, muscle and, certainly lean out. And obviously after your surgery in that first year, as I mentioned, right when we started today, you're going to be losing body fat, right? That is where your body is pulling those energy sources from to fuel itself is going to be from the fat stores. Okay. And so you will see fat loss in that first year. But today I really wanted to talk about once we get through that, that weight loss phase and we get more into, okay, this is where I'm at now. And now I really want to make more changes. These are the changes you want to make to calories and macronutrients. Okay. And I just always remind folks, you're going to see ups and downs on the scale as you go throughout. Remember that in my opinion, I would rather look at body composition measurements rather than just the number on the scale, because there's so many things that can impact your day-to-day weight on a scale. And sometimes when we're working towards body recomposition, and we've had a hard workout, or maybe we, incorporated more carbohydrate around a workout, we might see the number go up the next day and you think, oh my gosh, what did I do? And maybe the first kind of, reaction might be, oh my gosh, I need to cut my calories. Stay the course. Okay. Trust the process, because over time, over a longer period of time is how you're going to see these body recomposition goals be achieved. Okay. So give yourself time to do these goals, whether it's a muscle gaining goal, whether it's this recomposition goal. It is going to take months, not weeks, months to even longer, maybe a year or longer, to really see significant changes, especially if you are leaner, right? It's going to even take longer. So be patient. Give yourself a little grace from day to day. Number on the scale is going to go up and down, but overall, trust the process, because if you are focused on increasing your protein, we're looking at our overall intake, tracking it, maybe not every single day, but at least, 2-3 times a week, so that you know where your numbers are at. That way we can make adjustments as needed, right? And you can see those changes that you're aiming for. So thank you for following me today. I'm so glad that you came on and enjoyed this, hopefully enjoyed this episode. You can watch today's episode on my YouTube channel, the Active Bariatric Nutrition channel. Also, if you don't mind, please give this podcast, wherever you listen to it, a rating and a review, because that's how it gets out in front of more people. And if I could just ask you for one favor, if you wouldn't mind sharing this podcast with just one person who you think would find it helpful, I'd so greatly appreciate that. Because again, the goal of this podcast is to really get out information for active bariatric folks, right? There's just not a ton of research out there, and tons of just information that's readily available. And I'm hoping through this podcast every week we are spreading this information and giving you some good guidance that is science-backed, that you can implement so that you can get the most out of that bariatric surgery tool. So you can also follow me on social media. I have an Instagram page, Active Bariatric, or on my Facebook and TikTok pages. Those are both Active Bariatric Nutrition. And if you have a muscle gaining goal, or you are wanting to change your body composition after bariatric surgery and you have no idea where to start, please contact me about my one-to-one bariatric nutrition coaching services. You can learn more on my website, which is www.activebariatricnutrition.com. You can set up a discovery call so we can talk one-on-one and learn more about each other and learn more about your goals. Feel free to DM me anytime if you have questions. I'm happy to answer those as well. But just want to be able to, help you reach the goals that you're learning, or, you're working towards, and really utilize this tool, this bariatric surgery tool. So again, thank you for joining me today. I hope you found today's episode helpful. And guess what? We will do this again next week. Thanks so much. Have a great day.